Recording in progress.
We are going to get started. It's 7 o'clock. So if you gentlemen will take your seats. Welcome everyone to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Land Use Committee meeting. With us tonight on the Land Use Committee in the chamber, we have Councillor Lucas, Councillor Leary, Councillor Block, Councillor Lobovitz, Councillor Laredo, and Councillor Farrell. With us virtually, we also have Councillor Downs. We have a couple of other councillors who are not on the committee, but are city councillors joining us so far. More may join. We have Councillor Malachy and Councillor Lipoff virtually. And Councillor Wright. City staff. I haven't taken a look at that. From the planning department, we have planner Katie Wewell, Kat Kemet, Joe Iandosi, Jonah Temple from the law department. So far, we may be joined by more city staffers later too. All right, we're going to start right in on our agenda tonight. The first item is number 130-24, Class 2 auto dealer license. Petition for auto dealer license from New England Motor Mart. We'll hear from our clerk, who can give us a brief update on that. Oh, and Scott Matthews, our clerk.
I checked in with police, treasury, and ISD, and there's no issues with that one.
Usually for these, we just make sure they're all paid up on their taxes and fines and nothing is outstanding, and it sounds like that's fine. Would somebody from the committee, Councillor Lucas?
Motion to approve.
Let's take a vote.
Councillor Block?
Aye.
Councillor Downs?
Aye.
Councillor Farrell?
Aye.
Councillor Kelly?
Aye.
Councillor Leary?
Aye.
Councillor Lobovitz?
Aye.
Councillor Lucas?
Aye.
Councillor Laredo?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Now we're going to get into the slightly more in-depth land use items. I just want to give a little background on how we're doing things tonight because it's a little bit different. The City Council is now in a trial period of using the webinar format for the hybrid and virtual meetings in order to help hopefully curb Zoom bombing. The Land Use Committee will be taking public comment tonight on the agenda's docket items, both in person if you're in the chamber or online. If you're participating virtually and want to speak, please click the raise your hand button at the bottom of your screen. I'll call on you and the clerk, Scott, will change your status from attendee to panelist. There will be a little bit like a 4 or 5 second delay. After you're done speaking, he'll switch you back to attendee. So that, with the webinar format, is going to be the best way for everybody to be able to make comments or ask questions. Okay, number 139-24, which is a request to further extend non-conforming FAR and lot coverage at 157 Baldpate Hill Road. Let's hear from the planning department.
Good evening. I'm Joe O'Donoghue, and I'll be covering this petition.
Thank you, Joe. Go ahead.
Share my screen. Okay, so this is a petition for the addition of a lower level and first floor area that are going to exceed the by right lot coverage and floor area ratio for 157 Baldpate Hill. So the zoning relief needed is the request to further extend non-conforming floor area ratio and the request to increase non-conforming lot coverage. The criteria to consider are that the proposed addition of a lower level in additions to the first level, further extending the non-conforming floor area ratio and non-conforming lot coverage is consistent with and not in derogation of the size, scale, and design of other structures in the neighborhood, and that the proposed addition of a lower level in additions to the first level, further extending non-conforming floor area ratio and non-conforming lot coverage shall not be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure is to the neighborhood. This is where the property is located. It is over in the Oak Hill section of Newton, not far from West Roxbury, in the SR1 zone, which notably does have lower floor area ratio and lot coverage allowances than other zones. And before we proceed too much further, I do want to call out that we just received some updated site plans as well as architectural plans at 6:06 p.m. this evening. And we in the planning department have not had the opportunity to fully evaluate them. I'll continue to present them for the committee's awareness, but you may want to consider that as I continue to go through and before I turn it over back to the committee.
Joe,
So
thank you so far, but I'm thinking if the planning department, if the city just received materials at 6:06 p.m., I don't think that we should be discussing it, having the staff and the committee not be able to look at any of that ahead. So rather than spend your time now, I would entertain a motion to hold this item until we've all had a chance to review the materials. Councillor Farrell.
Chair, I move to hold this item so we have a chance to review the materials.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. We'll keep the public hearing open. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, let's vote on. Oh.
Madam Chair,
Councillor Downs.
I just wanted to inquire whether any member of the public is here to comment on that, just in case they aren't free when we bring it up later.
If you're in the chamber, could you raise your hand if you're here to talk about the petition on Baldpate Hill? No. To answer your question, no one here in the chamber is here to talk about that. Whoever's on virtual.
We've got two virtuals here, but they look like the petitioner and the attorney.
Yes, thank you. I see that. So I think we're going to vote on Councillor Farrell's motion to hold this until we've had a chance to review the materials.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes, Mr. Lipoff.
I'm just curious. Could we hear from the attorney as to what they brought in to see the level of change? Not that I think it should go forward because it's material so late. I get that, but I'm just curious to hear from the petitioner's attorney as to what happened. And
Madam Chair, point of order. There's a motion on the floor.
Yes, we're discussing the motion on the floor. Councillor Lipoff, I appreciate your interest in that. I personally am not interested in hearing from the attorney until we hear the whole thing when we have a chance to look at those materials. So I'm not going to do that tonight.
that's fine. No problem. Just
thank you. Hopefully,
just
because you're the former chair of this committee and a longtime experienced member and live on this road, I hope that you'll be able to join us when it comes back to us when we've all had a chance to review the materials.
Sure, you made an early night for me. Thank you.
Good night. All right, let's take a vote.
Councillor Block?
Aye.
Councillor Downs?
Aye.
Councillor Farrell?
Aye.
Councillor Kelly?
Aye.
Councillor Leary?
Aye.
Councillor Lobovitz?
Aye.
Councillor Lucas?
Aye.
Councillor Laredo?
Mr. Morris, we'll see you back here when we've all had a chance and we can put you on the next available slot for a public hearing. Next item is number 140-24, request to allow 3 stories to further extend non-conforming side setback and to exceed FAR at 86 Floral Street. Planning?
Okay, Joe Idonisi again. I'll be covering the petition for 86 Floral, which is the addition of a non-conforming 3rd story, vertically extending the non-conforming setback and exceeding the maximum floor area ratio. So these are the items of relief, those 3 that were just mentioned. There's a typo on that first slide. It is a side setback, not a front setback. Apologies for not noticing that earlier. The criteria to consider for this is that the proposed 3-story dwelling, which exceeds the floor area ratio and vertically extends a non-conforming side setback, is not in derogation of the size, scale, and design of other structures in the neighborhood, that the site is appropriate location for the 3-story dwelling, which exceeds the floor area ratio, that the 3-story dwelling, which exceeds the floor area ratio as developed and operated, will not adversely affect the neighborhood, and there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. Access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved, that the proposed addition, which vertically extends the non-conforming side setback, will not substantially be more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure is to the neighborhood. This is a look at the location. It is in Newton Highlands, fairly close to the Newton Highlands META stop, and just outside of the VC3 zone, where it is in the MR2 as well as MRT zone. They are going to stay within their MR2 zoning for this petition. But as you can see, there's a lot of different types of structures in the area as well. And this is a 2-family at this time. This is a look at the site plan, both existing and proposed. They're going to extend to the rear with a proposed deck addition, as well as to the front, where they're adding an entryway and building 2 stories above, which is going to increase their overall lot coverage and building area and floor area ratio as well. They are also building vertically, as will be shown a little bit more clearly on the elevations. This is a look at the structure from the front. As you can see, it is currently a 2.5-story structure. They want more area in what is currently that half-story or attic, and they are going to remove the existing roof and bring it up a few feet. It is going to go up to 35.6 total feet, which is under the total allowed height, but it will be a 3rd story, which requires relief. And you can also see where that entryway is recessed, and it will be coming all the way out from the 1st story up to the 3rd story. You can see the sides here. We don't have the existing elevation, but you can see that the 3rd story is just going to extend up for about 2/3 of the property towards the front. And you can see the decks a little bit more clearly in the rear as well there. This is also, if you look at this side back, the right side setback, the right / west one, that is the one that is currently non-conforming. This is the rear of the building as well, where you can see those decks a little bit more clearly, and where that 3rd story is above the 2 stories that'll remain. So before we cover the findings, I do want to cover that for the memorandum for this, and as well as the up to the presentation for this, we had received a floor area ratio worksheet from the petitioners that have 523 square feet in the basement. And that's what we went with, and that's requiring relief for floor area ratio. As the petitioners have raised up, and as we've had the Commissioner of ISD take a look, Anthony Ciccarello, as well as the Chief Zoning Official, Jane Sanasuaso, and myself and Katie took a look at it. It doesn't look like there's any area that should actually count towards floor area ratio in the basement, as none of the basement area actually protrudes 4 feet above the grade. So there should be 0 square feet, which should reduce the need to have any sort of, not reduce, but eliminate the need to have any sort of relief for floor area ratio. However, these are the documents we were submitted for the site plan and for the architectural plan. If approved through the committee and through the city council, they would be bound by those, and they wouldn't be able to suddenly add on an additional 523 square feet into the basement. But there are still 2 options generally for the council, for the committee, which is to, 1, hold until they have a worksheet that represents the floor area ratio as is actually correct, demonstrating 0 feet in the basement. Or the other one is to pass as it is, with the understanding that they will have to submit a corrected floor area ratio worksheet in order to obtain a building permit as a part of the natural process. And I defer to Katie if I missed anything on that procedurally or factually.
I think you got it, Joe. Just they're already non-conforming for FAR, so they are adding a little bit, which will still extend that. So the relief won't change. It's just a matter of what counts towards FAR that they are sort of counting, which shouldn't count.
Thank you, Joe and Katie. Those options are how I understand it too, and we'll discuss that in committee, whether to hold it or whether to pass it, conditional upon submission later, knowing that a building permit won't be issued until that is received. Is planning all done with this for now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the petitioner, either online or in the chamber, who would like to add to the presentation? Yes, could you come up to that microphone and turn it on at the base? Give us your name and address.
Thank you so much, Barbara Collins. Can you hear me?
No.
How's that?
That's much better. Thank you.
Thank you. Just regarding the FAR, that had actually been addressed earlier. First of all, I want to say the city did a fabulous
Could you just give us your name?
Barbara Collins, I'm the attorney.
The attorney, thank you.
So we had addressed that quite a while ago with the FAR because there was a question of correct information, and we had gone back and forth with the city. Everybody was amazing, very, very helpful, so I have no complaints. I'm so impressed. But we did bring that point up earlier, and we've lost some time. We really would hope the council would consider to let us, in good faith, make any type of correction or change for the building permit. We would be more than happy to do that. So thank you so much.
Is there anything else along with the petition that you want to point out to us that was not covered in the planning presentation?
I think we're good, and I really want to thank the city. They did a very good job.
Okay, thank you, and you're here in case we have any follow-up questions for the attorney.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, are there any members of the public who would like to speak or ask questions about this proposal? I don't see anyone in the chamber. I don't see anyone online. Mr. Morris, are you raising your hand to talk about the Floral Street project? Oh, your hand's down. We'll come back to you when we get to another project. Let's take it into the committee then. Any committee members have questions or comments about this petition? Councilor Lucas.
Yeah, just quick question. Ms. Wewell, you said that the FAR is presently non-conforming. Did I hear that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, because the planning memo says the FAR right now is 0.54 and the max is 0.56.
Sorry, I may have been looking at the wrong one. I think I was looking at Baldpate, so let me just triple check that. Sorry. I would go with the zoning review and the planning memo, though. I think I was looking at the wrong one.
Okay, all right. So yeah, that was my only question with this. So I am good with this petition.
Thank you, Councilor Lucas. Counselor Lobovitz, this is your ward. Would you like to say something about this?
Yes, I visited the property, and it certainly is consistent with the homes in the neighborhood. The plan is to keep this as a two-family, not convert it into a potential three-family. As far as I know, the neighbors have been very supportive. So, and the driveway will remain the same. No change in terms of parking, which was important to me. So when the time comes, I will move to support the permit application, with the caveat that was mentioned before, that the FAR worksheet would be submitted prior to the permit being formally issued.
Great.
Thank
So
you.
your motion would be to approve it as is with the condition that the FAR worksheet is submitted later and approved.
Yes, the second option that was presented, yes.
Great. We will consider that in 1 second. Would you also like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I move to close the public hearing. Thank you.
All in favor, please say aye. To the closing the public hearing part, aye.
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 And now let's take a look at the proposed condition and council order.
The findings are that the proposed three-story dwelling, which exceeds the allowed floor area ratio and vertically extends a non-conforming side setback, is not in derogation of the size, scale, and design of other structures in the neighborhood, as many of the surrounding dwellings pre-exist the zoning ordinance and have similarly sized structures on similarly sized lots. The increase in floor area ratio is spread out amongst 3 stories and adds a total of 171 square feet to the dwelling. 2, the site is an appropriate location for the 3-story dwelling, which exceeds the floor area ratio, as the dwelling is in close proximity to the Newton Highlands Village Center, which has a mix of building types, uses, and range of building sizes. 3, the 3-story dwelling, which exceeds the floor area ratio, as developed and operated, will not adversely affect the neighborhood because the dwelling will remain within the height allowance set forth by the zoning ordinance. 4, there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, as the proposed additions do not require or propose any change to parking or circulation. 5, access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved, as the proposed additions do not require or propose any change to parking or circulation. And 6, the proposed addition, which vertically extends the non-conforming side setback, will not be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure is to the neighborhood, as the dwelling proposes minimal additions within the existing building footprint. And we have standard conditions for this.
Thank you. I think we're ready to take a vote on that. Mr. Clerk?
Counselor Block?
Aye.
Counselor Downs?
Aye.
Counselor Farrell?
Aye.
Counselor Kelly?
Aye.
Counselor Leary?
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz?
Aye.
Counselor Lucas?
Aye.
Counselor Laredo? Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on. We have next item number 141-24, which is a request to amend a special permit number 316-20 and to exceed FAR at 432 Dedham Street. We'll hear first again from planning.
Hello, one moment, let me just share my screen. Okay, this is petition number 141-24, a special permit for 432 Dedham Street. The petitioner proposes to demolish the detached garage
In its place, an attached garage will be constructed with an accessory dwelling unit on the upper level, and a new addition will be created at the rear of the home. The work proposed needs relief to amend an existing council order and to exceed the floor area ratio allowed by right. Sorry if there's a little bit of whining, that's my little dog. In reviewing this request, the council should consider whether the site is an appropriate location for the proposed amendment and additions, which require relief for floor area ratio. If the proposed additions will adversely affect the neighborhood, if the proposed additions will create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, if access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and number of vehicles involved, and if the increase in FAR is not substantially more detrimental than the existing structure is to the neighborhood. The parcel is located in the single residence 2 district. The neighborhood is primarily residential and the zoning nearby is also predominantly residential. The lot was created as part of a rear lot subdivision in 2020, which was approved by special permit. However, the dwelling was constructed in 1890 and was not physically altered when the lot was subdivided. The only nonconformity the house has now is a nonconforming height of 37.64 feet, where up to 36 feet is allowed by right. The site is located behind 2 dwellings. These were the 2 dwellings that were permitted by special permit in the rear lot subdivision. So they have frontage on Dedham Street, and the house has access from the street via a common shared driveway in between the 2 front lots. It's set back roughly 200 feet from Dedham Street behind the houses and some foliage, so it's pretty well screened from Dedham Street. The petitioner proposes to remove the existing detached garage, which is located near the northern corner of the site behind the dwelling, and replace it with a larger attached garage in roughly the same location, which will also cover a portion of what is now paved driveway. This garage will have space for 2 cars and create a new accessory unit located on the upper level. The project doesn't need relief for setbacks, lot coverage, or open space. Lot coverage will increase from 8% to 10.8%, where up to 17% is allowed. Open space will decrease from 79.9% to 77.8%, where a minimum of 65% is required. The current structure has a total gross floor area of about 5,300 square feet and a floor area ratio of 0.17. The proposed structure with additions altogether will increase the FAR to 0.23, where 0.20 is allowed by right, so that does need relief. Altogether, the new structure with additions will have a total gross floor area of 7,345 square feet. This is the proposed front elevation. So the new garage will be here on the left. The accessory unit will be on the top level here. This is the elevation on the right side. This is the rear. The rear setback will decrease from 69.3 feet to 51.7 feet. That does not need relief. And the addition will be here on the right, and this landing will be created as part of what is planned here. And this is the left elevation. The setback will decrease from 30.1 feet to 23.6 feet, which is still compliant. That does not need relief. So altogether, the department has no objection to the amendment proposed here and the increase in FAR. Though FAR will increase to 0.23, the project doesn't need relief for other dimensional elements of the site, and it will create a new internal accessory apartment, which will help contribute to the city's efforts to provide a wider range and of sizes and types of dwelling units. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Kemet. I'm guessing that you are representing the petitioner?
Yes, I am.
Could you identify yourself and turn on your microphone and tell us what you'd like to present tonight?
I think you hear me now?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Yes. I am David Geffen, and I'm here with my wife, Deborah Carroll, and we are living at 432 Dedham Street, and I am the original petitioner for the two homes in front and the special permit by, rear lot special permit. I have to thank Kat. I think she did my whole job for me. And if it were just a SR2 without a special permit, this would be pretty much by right. But I'm here to respect your zoning bylaws, and I'm ready to answer anyone's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Giffen. We agree with you that Ms. Kemet and the Planning Department often does a very good job presenting these at the beginning, making the redundancy sometimes unnecessary from petitioners. Many of us remember when you were before us with this project in 2020. So there's nothing other that you want to add, but you'll be available for questions? If there are some.
I mean, nothing significant or objections of every abutter that I've spoken to. Just that my wife and I have grown to love the building and respect how it was built. 1890 is in question, but the Wade family was very prominent in that area. Their mansion was originally on Oak Hill and later became the clubhouse for Charles River Country Club. They had 225 acres, and it was subdivided into several parcels. This particular parcel always had Levi Wade's wife's name, Margaret, on it. It has become smaller and smaller as 11 owners have gone through the property.
Thank you for some of that background, which is probably particularly helpful for some of our newer members who weren't here when we heard some of this a few years ago. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this petition? I don't see anyone online or in the chamber. Let's see what the committee members have to say about it. Let's bring it into the Land Use Committee member. Councilor Laredo.
So I'll be very brief. I certainly remember when you came before us, it's been at least a couple of years ago now. My memory's fading, I guess, as to the exact time. But I thought the project was good then. I think what you're doing is really clearly an appropriate change that will help you and your family. I see zero negative to this, and I urge us to approve it quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Laredo. Councilor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to say we had a chance to visit the site and talk with Mr. Giffen, and I couldn't be more enthusiastic about supporting this project. It is one of the great houses in the area and one of the great families, back with the Fullers and the Hydes, I think, actually. So it goes back to the beginning. The family goes back to the beginnings of Newton. And what Mr. Giffen and his wife want to do is restore the house to its original magnificent state. And I personally am grateful for him for doing that, and I hope my colleagues here will consider all of that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Farrell. Mr. Giffen, I think that the answer to this is probably understood, but with an ADU, with an accessory dwelling unit, you plan to be living in the building as well as then having that be an accessory unit, is that correct?
Well, we have no permission to build it yet, but I would say we don't know how we will use it, but it is built deliberately to accommodate a elevator with 4 stops. And Age in Place Living is a company of mine that is very passionate about allowing people to stay in their homes as long as possible. And yeah, I'll be 70 this year. So I hope I can stay there for many years.
Well, as the owner, you would be required by ordinance to be living in either the renovated house or the accessory dwelling unit. So I guess that's what I'm asking you. Yes, you plan to be living in and occupying one of those two units versus renting them.
Yes, that is the intent, to live in one or the other.
Great, thank you. I think, last call for comments from anyone? Councillor Farrell, would you like to move to also close the public hearing?
I hereby move to close the public hearing.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
And
Aye.
Thank you, Councillor Downs. And you're going to make.
I would like to move to accept this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. The clerk will call the roll. Oh, sorry? Oh, yes, draft council order. Again, my bad. Let's take a look at the conditions and the draft council order. Yes. Thank you.
Sure. So for findings, we have 1, the site in a single residence 2 district is an appropriate location for the proposed additions that require relief for floor area ratio because the massing is well screened from Dedham Street and will allow for an accessory dwelling unit. 2, the additions that exceed the FAR will not adversely affect the neighborhood because the additions are set far back from Dedham Street and will be well screened. 3, the additions will not create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians because the curb cut and driveway location will not change. 4, access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and number of vehicles involved. 5, the increase in FAR is not substantially more detrimental than the existing structure is to the neighborhood because it will add a new unit of housing on the site, the flexibility to renovate a historic structure and add a modestly sized unit supports the city's goals of increasing housing stock in a way that utilizes existing infrastructure and increases the variety of residential unit configurations. And for conditions, we have the standard conditions for plan referencing, building permit, and occupancy, and adding in that the petitioner shall comply with the city's accessory apartment and short-term rental ordinances.
Thank you, Ms. Kemet. Now I think we're ready to take a vote on this. Mr. Clerk.
Councillor Block?
Aye.
Councillor Downs?
Aye.
Councillor Farrell?
Aye.
Councillor Kelly?
Aye.
Councillor Leary?
Aye.
Councillor Lobovitz?
Aye.
Councillor Lucas?
Aye.
Councillor Laredo?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Wow, we're being unanimous tonight. So far, we're ahead of schedule. Thank you, Mr. Geffen. Good luck with the project.
Thank you, Jim.
Our final item for the night is number 79-24, which is a request to amend special permit 395-22 to allow for a cash payment in lieu of providing IZ units at 136-144 Hancock Street. Again, we'll start with planning and then we'll get to the petitioner.
All right, hello again. This is petition number 79-24, a special permit for 136-144 Hancock Street. It's a request to amend an existing special permit to allow for a cash payment in lieu of providing inclusionary units. The petition proposes to amend, the petitioner proposes to amend their existing special permit 395-22. This would allow for a cash payment instead of providing 2 inclusionary units approved for the sites. The project will remain 16 units in total if approved, but the 2 units that would have been affordable will be market rate. The first public hearing for this item was held on February 6th of this year. The item was held at this time in part to give the petitioner and staff some time to evaluate the potential of having 1 affordable unit located on site and the applicant making a payment for the remaining unit. As a quick refresher, this is the proposed site plan. The petitioner received a special permit in 2022 to demolish a single-family dwelling on the site and convert 2 of the Walker Center buildings into multifamily dwellings and to construct 4 single-family attached dwellings into new structures along the Grove Street frontage. In total, the petitioner got approval for 16 residential units in 4 buildings and 27 parking stalls. To satisfy the inclusionary zoning section of the ordinance, the special permit required the petitioner to provide 2.4 deed restricted affordable units on the project. That's 15% of the total. Those units are to be affordable to households earning up to 80% of the area median income. So the special permit as it stands today includes approval for 2 affordable units and a payment of $260,000 for the fractional amount. The zoning ordinance states that City Council can grant a special permit that allows a cash payment to replace affordable units if Council makes a finding that there will be an unusual net benefit to achieving the city's housing objectives as a result of allowing a cash payment rather than constructing the units on site. These findings must include the following: consideration of the appropriateness of the location for income-eligible households, including proximity to and quality of public transit, schools, and other services, the current balance of the inclusionary housing fund, and the purposes of the inclusionary zoning ordinance. The ordinance states that the purpose of inclusionary zoning includes the following: to promote the public health, safety, and welfare by encouraging a diversity of housing opportunities for people of different income levels, provide for a full range of housing choices throughout the city for households of all incomes, ages, and sizes, increase the production of affordable housing units to meet existing and anticipated housing needs within the city, and to work to overcome economic segregation regionally and within Newton. At the previous hearing, the applicant indicated they were open to the possibility of providing 1 affordable unit on site and paying cash for the remaining 1.4 affordable units required by the ordinance. Planning staff have reviewed a draft plan from the petitioner and have connected with them about some of these questions. And they have proposed 1 affordable unit on the ground floor of the Walker Center, which would be 1,675 square feet in size. As proposed, our understanding is that this plan would not comply with the ordinance. To meet the requirements of the ordinance, the unit must be 10% of the sum of the total square footage of all market rate and all inclusionary units in the proposed development. So for a project of this size, it would need to be significantly larger than what is proposed. And that is the case in part because the ordinance does not explicitly allow this half and half approach where part of the total need is met by a cash payment and part is met by providing a unit. It just doesn't account for how to proceed explicitly in this scenario. So as it stands now, the units would need to comply with the other standards in the ordinance as well. So it would need to have an equivalent level of accessibility as a market rate units, and they must be proportionally distributed and located in no less desirable locations than the market rate units. In terms of next steps, the city believes there are 3 options from here the ordinance allows for. The city's top preference would be that the petitioner builds the project as approved in their existing special permit. This would require 2 affordable units that are equally distributed and comparable to the market rate units, subject to approval by housing staff, and a payment of $260,000 for the required fractional payment. The second preference would be for the petitioner to consider to pursue the relief required in this petition that they requested here. So if approved, this means the petitioner would pay the full payment in lieu of providing the 2.4 affordable units. So that would be a payment of $1,560,000. The third option would be for the petitioner to seek relief to amend their special permit to provide 1 inclusionary unit, and that unit would need to comply with the ordinance. And it would also include a payment of $910,000 for the 1.4 affordable units not built. So I know that's a lot of information. I'll wrap it up there, but yeah, we're interested to hear as well from the applicant a little bit more about their reasoning for why a cash payment to replace the affordable units will have an unusual net benefit to achieving the city's housing goals.
Thank you, Ms. Kemet. Now we'll be happy to hear from the petitioner.
It's hard to believe it's been almost 4 years since I've had the opportunity to stand here before the committee and address you in this manner due to the pandemic. And it is indeed an unusual circumstance that drives me here this evening.
Just identify yourself in case there's any question.
Well,
there are some new members in the public. Just give us your name, please.
I think before I speak on the Hancock Street petition, I would ask you a question, Madam Chair. I see there are a number of people on screen, and I was told that I was on screen before, but have anyone other than remote counselors or city employees participated in this meeting?
They have not. I asked for that, and the clerk is managing that by looking at the screen.
They have not. There's a reason why they have not, and there's a reason why I was not heard, and there's a reason why other people aren't here. I've spoken to at least 2 other people who tried to take advantage of the webinar and couldn't be heard. I was tearing my hair out when you were going through this discussion of the petition, the earlier petition, Baldpate Hill Road. I couldn't raise my hand, I couldn't be heard, and I couldn't be recognized. So
So as I said at the very beginning, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I do want you to identify yourself and speak to this petition. As I said at the very beginning, we are in a trial period using the webinar format, and I think many of us are very much aware of some of the difficulties with it, but I appreciate you who tried to use it tonight to point that out, and that will be an ongoing conversation we're having in the city with the city council and with the IT. So thank you and I'm sorry for the frustration for those who wanted to speak and were unable to. But let's move on with this petition now, please.
Oh, well, this petition can be handled very simply. I trust you all received the letter that I sent to you late last night. Oh, for the record, my name is Terry Morris. I'm an attorney with offices at 57 Elm Road, Newton, and I'm here representing the petitioner in this matter, Newton Walker LLC. You all received the letter that I wrote quite late in the night last night and sent off to you. You probably received it this morning, so I don't need to go into it. While we feel very strongly that we've made a case in support of our so-called hybrid or half-half petition, we also recognize that there is one potential argument to be made that is maybe a bridge too far for some councilors to cross in order to accept that as a viable proposition. And that is there were 3 issues raised in the planning department memo. The first was the question about location. And you read the argument or analysis that was put in the letter about what's desirable and undesirable and how those determinations are clearly subjective. And one should not, as a matter of course, assume that a first floor unit is less desirable than some other unit. And for all the reasons I stated in that letter, I need not repeat them. The second issue was something that I don't believe the committee has ever had to address or has to address so far, and that is a little-known phrase in the ordinance that deals with a standard or a finding that the committee must make or the council must make, and that is that there is an unusual net benefit in order to allow for substitution of money for units. I don't know whether you've ever had to deal with that, but it is something that we had attempted to make a case for. I think that had we gone forward or go forward, that we could make a case for that. That doesn't necessarily involve more, an additional funds being paid, which seems to be a rather limited option. The real problem that we had was with the ordinance itself. The ordinance itself establishes a formula that says in a number of places, you must do this, you must do this. And the one thing that you need to do is you need to provide 10% of the units that, size of the units, that 10% of the total volume of the project. In this case, the total volume of the project was 35,595 square feet, which meant we would have had to provide a unit of 3,559 square feet. I think even one of the suggestions that was left up there in the board by Ms. Kemet said that that was one of the options, which means we would have to give you a 3,500 square foot unit. Clearly, that's not possible. So we had proposed what I will admittedly tell you is a creative look at the way to solve the problem, and that is to basically have the denominator in that fraction. We would increase the size of the unit that we proposed. It would be a 3-bedroom unit, which is highly unusual given these situations because not many developments nowadays can include 3-bedroom units. So providing one is an unusual event. But after having worked on a response to the memo and take another look at the matter, my clients basically wish to ask for a continuance to explore other possibilities. Rather than limit it to what's on the board now, we recognize that this is truly a unique situation. Everyone, I think, would agree that we want to see this project go forward. And we are certainly committed to make every effort to have that happen. We don't want to close the door simply because one possible option looks like a dead end and may not succeed. That may require further consultation, direct consultation with planning and the law department, and we will seek to do that. But until that time, we would like to have the matter continued.
Thank you, Mr. Morris, for stating that so clearly, and we will definitely take a vote on that. In order to avoid the previous problem we had of people not being able to speak who wanted to, I would normally next go to comments from the public before bringing it in. I'm not sure we need to spend too much time in committee if we're going to approve a continuance, but there is at least one member of the public on the webinar. Are you also a member of the public, sir? All right, let's go first to the woman who has her hand up, Kathleen Coral Greiser, to speak, and then we'll go to you, sir. Ms. Greiser?
Yes. Hello. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what to say since the petitioner has asked for a continuance, and I'm not sure that anything is going to happen today. But I would say, in general, my strong feeling is that our inclusionary zoning ordinance should be adhered to, and attempting to move units off-site seems to be the opposite of inclusionary zoning. So I hope that the Land Use Committee, the City Council, and the Planning Department will take our inclusionary zoning ordinance very seriously as they move forward. That's really all I wanted to say. I thought there would be a vote tonight, and I wanted to strongly urge that you basically stick to the policy and insist on 2 units. But since there'll be a continuance, it sounds like, I guess I'll wait and see what comes up next. But in general, I think inclusionary zoning should be taken seriously. And if a petitioner is attempting to make cash payments, those cash payments should reflect the actual cost of building those inclusionary units somewhere else, including land, all the costs associated with it, the affordable marketing plan, everything, renovations, construction, and the payment that was proposed doesn't sound like it comes anywhere near to covering those costs. I think the inclusionary zoning ordinance should be taken seriously. Thank you.
We agree with you, Ms. Greiser, and thank you for those comments. And even though we're not going to be voting on it, which I think we all thought we were going to be doing tonight, it's still helpful to have had that input from a member of the public. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Good evening, David Hedison, 215 Waverly Ave. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and thank you for hearing what I have to say. I would like to say I have the deepest respect for the developers, Mr. Oliveri and Mr. Consigli of Newton Gardens LLC, and I do strongly support Newton's inclusionary zoning. In my profession, I do this every day. I build affordable housing. I work with developers. And I was very happy to hear the applicant indicate that they would like to consider other options. In my work, we have dealt with other developers that have come forward and say, we have a 3,000 square foot unit and there's no way we're going to be able to appropriately make that affordable. What we have done, or what I have done in my profession, is it's a wonderful opportunity. You've been asked to do 2 affordable units. 2 at 3,000 sound quite large. Maybe they could consider making 4 units, 1,500 each. And maybe the council could consider 18 units at that site with 4 affordable units. The need for affordable units in this community is significant. As I've stated via email, the Armory, which Mr. Oliveri and Mr. Consiglio are involved with, is estimated to cost $650,000 per unit without land acquisition costs. To create those units other place in this city will be met with significant oppositions by abutters and the cost of land acquisition. This is a wonderful opportunity for 2 affordable units in our great city. And if they want to consider out of the box, maybe we can consider 4 units at 1,500. And I'd say, thank you so much for taking this bylaw seriously, and I'll be back next month. Thank you.
Great. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you for those comments, and it's good to hear from someone else in a similar business. Are there any other comments before we take a vote on it? No? Yes, sir. We're going to bring it into committee. Go ahead, Councilor Block.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. I'm curious, maybe this is a question for legal, about the difference between holding this and the petitioner withdrawing it. It doesn't sound like the petitioner is proposing to withdraw, but perhaps that's something they should consider. I'm just curious about the difference.
I can take a quick stab at that, and Planning and Law can follow up if I get this wrong. They can give you a more precise answer. There is a difference. If they were to request to withdraw without prejudice, that would be when they come back, they would have to refile and start all over. If they planned significant changes, then that would make sense. If they're thinking about making some smaller changes and basically coming back with this same proposal, a continuance or a hold is simpler, it gets them back quicker, cleaner, and they don't need to refile. Mr. Temple, is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. I have nothing else to add to that.
Oh, I'm impressed with myself. Thank you. Good question, though, Councilor Block. Thank you for asking it, and this is in your ward, so it's great that you understand the difference, too. Other comments, questions, or would you like to make a motion? Oh, we also have, before we come back to you, I see Councilor Gentile, also from Ward 4. Councilor Gentile?
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the last meeting, the counsel for the petitioner, I thought, made a suggestion that deserved to be fully explored. He talked about linking the cash contribution to be used at a couple of units that the city owns immediately next to the site that the city bought, with ARPA funds a while back, and in turn, maybe being able to make as many as four affordable units by using the $1 million, whatever, 620,000 or whatever it is. I thought that was an idea that was worth exploring. I still do. I hope that when they are talking about asking for a continuance to explore other options, that would be one of the options that they might consider. And to that end, I have a request. Before this gets too far along and gets headed in a direction where people sort of get locked into positions, I'm hoping that all 3 Ward 4 councilors can be kept in the loop by both the developer, the attorney for the developer, and for the planning department, so that we don't get surprised by some proposed solution down the road. So again, I want to be very clear. I'm asking, and I'm putting it on the planning department to please keep us in the loop. Hopefully I'm speaking for my colleague on the committee, Councilor Block, and also for Councilor Krinsman, to again, please keep us involved.
Thank you, Councillor Gentile. I'll just quickly talk about what you suggested about considering the adjacent parcel. That is one of the options that has been being considered by the developer and the planning department. And as you know, that project, that parcel is before the City Council Real Property Reuse Committee currently. And there has not been a discussion and a vote on the best way to use that parcel. As you know, those ARPA funds were used to purchase a site with two possible intentions in mind. One would be affordable housing, and the other or would be for future use, expansion use for Williams School as a longer range site opportunity. I know that there was discussion about this and the whole thing so far about co-ownership, and these were going to be condominium units to be sold versus units that may be rented and managed by the Newton Housing Authority. I think it's a little more complicated than something that can be resolved tonight, but I'm sure that that is going to be an ongoing part of the conversation. Mr. Morris, would you like to briefly address that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank Councilor Gentile for his comments, and I will commit to him as the one who made that suggestion on behalf of the client that I am committed and my clients are committed to keeping you, Councilor Krinsman and Councilor Block in the loop. I think it's important that you had made that observation, Councilor Gentile, because we found we were meeting some headwinds on the city side of things that really maybe you've now given us the impetus to go a little further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilor Gentile.
I just want to add one thing, because you correctly point out the two different potential options for the site that the city bought, being not only for affordable housing, but for the school use or a combination. The reuse, I believe our public hearing is later this month on that site. There's a lot line or a proposed lot line that has been submitted with that proposal that would separate out, I think, about 10,000 square feet of land for future school use. There's a letter that was recently sent by Commissioner Morse to the PTO, that addresses some of the concerns and some of the possible uses down the road that they have raised. And Councilor Morse did a very good job of addressing some of those suggestions. In particular, there was some consideration or thought by, I guess, the PTO about using the entire site for possible future school use. But Councilor Morse explains that, the historic nature of those properties, and he lists, like three different, the National Registry, the state, and whatever, and how difficult it would be to try and, demolish those buildings. I would suggest that you ask for a copy of that. I think it will be really helpful to the committee to see what he says. And the other important thing that I didn't realize is what the city is thinking is that if there were to be a future use or a future expansion of the Williams School, it would not come out the side into the lot. It would go out the rear of the building, and that 10,000 square feet would be used possibly, for a new playground and so forth, and to make for a better site plan. So I want to make sure you know about the letter, and I suggest that you ask. I got a copy of it myself today, and I suggest that you ask the commissioner to get a copy to the rest of the the committee members, because I think you'll find it helpful.
Thank you, Councilor Gentile. All the more reason that I'm glad we're not voting on this tonight, and to let Real Property Reuse do their work on how they decide to use that site. We have some hands in the council. First, Councilor Farrell, and then Councilor Lobovitz.
Thank you very much, Chair. Given the complexity of the discussion about this particular property and now the conversations about its interfacing with the next door property. I would like to piggyback on Councilor Gentile's suggestion that the planning department keep all of us on this committee informed of, so that we don't end up in a last minute rush to try to understand the complexity of it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Councillor Lobovitz.
Yes, I think it was mentioned that the PTO had some ideas about this. As far as I know, the schools would be represented by the superintendent and the school committee, not the PTO. So I just wanted to keep in mind for everyone that before I would think about this, I would want to know the intention of the school committee and the superintendent for the use of this property, and certainly wouldn't want to support that and preempt all options to enhance the public schools, including the Williams School. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lobovitz. Attorney Temple, you have
Thank you,
something.
Chair. I do just want to clarify that there is not going to be any ability for this committee to link the use of inclusionary housing funds to that project next door. Under our ordinance, all payments in lieu go half to the Newton Housing Authority and half into the city's Affordable Housing Trust. And the money will then be utilized through that process. And it doesn't preclude it being used ultimately for the next door project, but it is in some ways beyond the scope of the special permit relief here.
Thank you, Mr. Temple, for reminding us of that. Councillor Block.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. My comment in a way dovetails with what Jonah Temple just said. I think our first task, everyone's first task, is to see whether the inclusionary zoning ordinance can be followed and implemented. And that includes all of the stipulations that the planning department provided in its memo. For example, the distribution of the units, which by my my view would mean one on the ground floor and one on the second floor, there being two levels to that proposed unit, but that we grapple with that both the petitioner does and the planning department does, and hopefully come back with a plan that can meet the inclusionary zoning requirements and move this project forward, because that's really our first mandate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Block. Oh, did you have your hand up from the public again? While we still have the public hearing open, come back. Thanks.
Hi, David Hedison, 215 Waverly Ave again. As there was new information provided, there is language that was brought up that this would be a very unique situation, that there would be some extraordinary benefit of $1.5 million. There currently is over $4 million in the Affordable Housing Trust currently, which does not preclude any of those funds being used for the adjacent property. And in a beautiful world, we could have 2 inclusionary units at this site and have additional affordable units adjacent, which would actually make a much more significant impact than just 2. The need in Newton is far beyond 2, far beyond 4, far beyond 100. So I think when we have conversations about how can we replace 2 units or $1.5 million to help another project, Newton is very fortunate to have a wealth of funds and access to other state and federal funds to build additional affordable units should the city wish to do so. So the abutting property can be developed as affordable housing, not at the loss of the units proposed at this site. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Hessen. Okay, I think we have all been heard. We are going to keep the public hearing open. Mr. Councillor Block.
I move to hold.
Let's take a vote.
Councillor Block?
Aye.
Councillor Downs?
Aye.
Councillor Farrell?
Aye.
Councillor Kelly?
Aye.
Councillor Leary?
Aye.
Councillor Lobovitz?
Aye.
Counselor Lucas?
Aye.
Counselor Laredo?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And we are adjourned.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, we are adjourned, but what would you like to say, Mr.?
Before you adjourn, I'd like to address a procedural issue that I opened my remarks with about the new, whatever you call it, the new way of communicating at these meetings virtually.
The webinar format,
Yeah,
which has been
exactly.
already decided.
I believe I owe it to my clients to be able to say this. And there was the whole idea that something was submitted at the last hour. I understand Councilor Laredo and others are particularly concerned about that. I think in this case, there's some background that is worth sharing. Excuse.
Yes, Councilor Laredo.
I don't think you voted on it. I don't think you voted on it.
We voted to hold the motion, and I made a motion that I said we were adjourned, and then you did come forward. So technically, Councilor Laredo is right. I think that, as I said earlier too, I think the conversation about the public access to public hearings is definitely worth discussing. I don't think we need to do it right here in this format. But I think welcome to talk with the president of the council, with IT, with me as the chair of the of this committee, and we'll continue to work on that. I personally have issues with the webinar format too, so people are not unsympathetic to your perspective. Thank you. We are adjourned.